Alright guys, Glocks here. So to get straight to the point, in this video I'm going to be going step by step on how to color manga. So if you ever wondered how fans made pages that look like this or this, then this video is definitely for you. So without wasting any more time, let's get straight into it. So the first thing you're going to want to do is import your image or scan into whatever painting software you're going to be using. So in this video, I'm personally going to be using Clip Studio EX, and I'm pretty sure everything I'm doing here, you're going to be able to do in some, if not most, digital painting software. So if you're using Clip Studio Paint, good for you. If you're not, try your best to follow as much as possible. Alright, so once you have your scan imported, you're going to click on the layer that scan is in, click the layer option on the top of the screen, and then click rasterize. And by doing this, you're basically converting that scans layer from an image layer to a raster layer, which in short means you're making it editable, which is necessary for our next step, or moving on at all, because without that, you wouldn't be able to draw on it, erase lines, or any of that good stuff. So for our next step, you're going to want to pick the auto select tool, or the magic wand is most like to call it. And the moment you do that, you're going to want to make sure that if you haven't already, you're going to put it on the refer to layers option and have it on the plus sign. That way you can select multiple things at once. And the moment you have it on the right settings, you're going to want to select basically every single piece of black in your image. And while you do that, you want to make sure you get the lasso tool and select every white line that's within that black as well. And I'm just going to speed this up because I have no idea why it took so long on a 30-second process. Alright, so after you're done selecting all the blacks and the white lines inside, you should only have kind of like the outline of each shape. And the next step you're going to do is really important, so you're just going to want to click edit and then go all the way down to tonal correction. Once you go to tonal correction, click reverse gradient and voila. Now you have nothing on the page except the line art. This is especially good when you know that the section that you're selecting isn't actually black, but just a darker tone or value overall. Like for instance, right now I'm coloring Boruto and I know his actual outfit isn't really just plain flat out black. Because if we look at the original color palette, we know that his actual outfit is more of a dark grayish color, and in some settings it might be a more dark desaturated blue or desaturated brown. Anyway, as you can see, all we have now is the line art. And though it might not look as crisp as you would imagine, you gotta realize that it's either this or you trace over the entire page as a whole, which is a lot more time consuming. And when you get to coloring, you're gonna realize that it doesn't really bother you as much as you thought it did initially anymore. Anyway, so now that we have all that messy stuff out of the way, we can finally get started with our coloring. Alright, so now the first thing you want to do so you can actually, color under that layer is convert our line art layer that we just made into a multiply. That way we can have a regular layer underneath it and color in that without having to worry about going over the lines. Now for this scene, I'm gonna have Boruto in like a sunset kind of in between that. So we're still gonna have a little bit of blue and a little bit of orange to represent the sun going down. That way we're gonna have his skin be a more darker value of the regular peach color. Sometimes the skin color might not even be peach, depending on the setting. You might have it go towards the more bluish or greenish hues. That way the character, actually looks like they're in that painting. And you know what? So we can actually, accurately represent that, I'm gonna have my backgrounds be done first. So instead of the lasso tool, I'm gonna pick the rectangle selection tool, and then I'm just gonna fill everything with this kind of bluish and orange hue. I mean gradation, my bad. And I'm only gonna do this for Boruto's panel because he's actually, in the sky, whereas Mitsuki and Sarada are just looking up to him from the ground. So I'm just gonna fill their panels with some mildly saturated brown and a darker value for the gradation. And honestly, if you were to ask me why I'm doing this, my only answer would be that towards the higher point of the panels, you can see the characters' faces. So I'd say making it darker at the bottom and lighter at the top makes it so that people actually, focus on that instead of anything going on at the bottom or where I don't want them focusing. And obviously, it's not going to apply all the time. It's just a fun strategy I like to utilize every now and then, especially when I feel like it's necessary. And I feel like if there was any place I got it from, it was probably from reading manhwa or webtoons, because I have to have gotten it from somewhere. I know damn well I didn't come up with this. Anyway, once you're done doing the backgrounds, you want to grab your lasso tool. So all we're going to do is kind of trace around Boruto, kind of outline him. And once we're done with that, we're just going to fill him in with a base color. And really, your base color could be anything. Some people like to do it with gray. I personally just do it with the character's skin color because it makes it a lot easier for me. That way I can just paint over everything. And then I just look at it and compare it to the background and say, does this color look like it's meant to be in this set? If it doesn't, I just fill in with a different value of that same color until something eventually clicks. So what I'm going to do next is that I take my auto select and then I select my base color. And then I'm going to take the lasso tool, but instead of having it on the plus sign, I'm going to have it on the minus sign. That way I can actually deselect what I already selected. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to basically deselect every single part of Boruto where his skin should be visible. That way, once I do that, I can make another layer and then fill that in with the base color for Boruto's clothes. So next we're going to go to the skin layer and then color Boruto's hair. But before we do that, we're actually going to pixel lock it. That way we don't have to worry about coloring outside of that skin layer and going into where his clothes should be. We're basically in that phase where we're just applying our flat colors. So now I'm just going to apply what I did for the hair, but do it for the clothes instead. So I'm going to rinse and repeat until I'm done. Now, as you're applying your fats, keep in mind what I said about making your colors match your background. If you color picked every single color on my screen right now, you would notice that most of them are towards the reddish hues. And like I said earlier, I wanted Boruto to be kind of in front of a sunset, so I applied all of my colors, keeping that in mind. So say for instance you were in a cooler background or it's nighttime where you're in the snow or something like that, you would have maybe more desaturated, cooler or bluer hues. And I promise you applying this technique to any one of your pieces makes them at least 5 times better than they were initially. Alright, now that we're done doing Boruto's flats, as like I said earlier, I'm going to apply a sunset, so we need an actual sun. So I'm just going to grab the ellipse tool and make a circle right under Boruto's face, and we're just going to fill that in with some bright golden yellow. And I think the placement here is perfect because like I said earlier, I want the brighter spots to be the point of focus on this piece. Alright, now I'm going to go back to filling in the flats once again, so I'm just going to speed everything up. Alright, so once you're done applying all your flats, you know how your page should look like, everything seems calm and composed. Next thing I went ahead and did was label all my layers. Now, of course, this is completely optional. And I only did this because if I felt like dealing with multiple panels, you have to kind of stay organized. So I went ahead and made several folders and put each one of my layers, labeled layers, into those folders for each panel. All right, so next thing you're going to want to do is basically apply your shadows. So like your flats, your shadows are also going to want to reflect the ambience of your settings. So like I said, we have a sunset, we're going to have reddish shadows. If you're in a blue background, bluish shadows. Pretty easy to understand. So to make life easier for yourself, you basically want to keep your shadows in a different layer. You're going to make it on top of your base for whatever you're coloring. So right now I'm coloring my shadows on top of my base for my skin layer. And you're also going to want to clip that layer to the base layer you're coloring on. That way you don't color outside of it and go into anything else like the clothes or the background. And that way when you make a mistake, you can start all over without, having to erase everything else. And one last thing you need to take into consideration when you're coloring your shadows, and you need to take into account where your light source is. Right now we have the sun behind Boruto, so I know that the lighting is going to come directly from behind him. So keeping that in mind, I'm going to have all my shadows painted in respect to that. Alright, now that I'm done with all my shadows, I want to get started and apply my lighting. Now your lighting is a little bit more complicated than how you'd apply your shadows or your flats, because there's just so much you have to actually take into account when doing that. But to keep things simple, just know the direction of where your light is coming from, and your color that is bouncing onto the surface you're coloring is going to have the color of your light source, or at least something remotely close to it with a much brighter value. And I'm not gonna lie, our sun here is looking kind of dark in value, so we're gonna just up that a little bit. And if you're curious as to how my lighting has that glowing effect, if you just take a look at my layer composition, you'd see that not only do I have it clipped to my shadow layer, I also have the mode on add. Make sure you have it on add glow specifically, that we can actually have that glowing effect. Like your shadows, apply your lighting based on where the position of the light source is, and depending on your skill level, everything should come together just fine when you're done. And I'm pretty sure that's all I have to say, so for the rest of the video I'm just going to be speeding through, but I guess you can keep watching if you're curious to see the entire process and how it ends off. Alright guys, so this is how the entire thing ended up coming out, and I have to say I really do like it, though I do think it could have been a little bit better. And if you did like this tutorial and want to see more content like this on this page, I suggest liking this video and maybe consider giving the channel a sub. Like always, you all have a great one and stay blessed.